Welcome back to our Business Partner tutorial series. In this tutorial, we'll be looking at setting up and managing the third and fourth of the 6 defaults, materials and hardware. From the dashboard, we'll go to our default setup and slip down to materials. And as always, we have our list view, and you can pick and choose. Again, the search feature is not very useful unless this list gets very long where you have to scroll the page. Right now we're only looking at 21 of the 54. If we click on all here, then it would require you to search, so you could come up and say you want to look at a specific portion of this. And basically we're sharing this interface for materials and hardware. So when we opened it up, we opened materials, and so we were seeing 21 of 54. When we go to the hardware button under default setup, basically takes us to the same place with a search criteria filled in so that we only see hardware. So here we're seeing 33 of 54. When we go to default setup and materials, we're seeing 21 of 54. And this area is a real time saver for you in the fact that you can save a default setting of groups, and you can get as specific as you want or as generic as you want, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's just pop in here to this CRP10 Cherry Stained Glaze. If you look over here to the right, you see that we basically have left all of these questions with a need selection. So we're not being very specific on the finish portion of it. We're choosing a finish process, so it will be priced appropriately, but we haven't chosen a stain or paint color or a glaze color. And that makes this useful for a lot of different scenarios, and yet it still fills in a lot of information for you. So up here we start with our default name, and you need to be specific enough about the name that you can choose it from all the others. In this case, the door selection is going to be a Conestoga CRP10, the wood species is going to be cherry, and the finish is going to be a stained glaze finish. So we look here and we see that we have CRP10s chosen, except for on the slab ends. And you may find some variations here. If I had a CRP 10334 or one of those type doors, I would still have the CRP10 chosen for my panelized in and my wainscot panel. And then you're choosing your source in this column, and we talked about some of this earlier in an earlier tutorial. But here we're choosing whether we're going to buy this from someone, outsource it, or whether we're going to make it in-house. And in this case, we're doing a little bit of both. So all of the doors through the slab ends we're going to outsource to a supplier, and we're going to make our own fillers, toe board, and face frame. And in these cases, a lot of you probably don't have a source where you could buy that anyway, although you could buy material that could be used as a filler or toe board, but you can't specifically buy a toe board from a supplier typically. Here you're choosing your material, and you would have named that in the material database that we went over in an earlier tutorial. Again, you want to be fairly specific there. Here, the panel profile, edge profile, and frame profile, as we talked about in the door database, carry no cost. These are just informational fields only, as are the paint stain color and glaze color. Informational fields only. You're adding details to your reports so that your employees know what to do, and when you provide your estimate proposal to your client, they know what they've asked for. The cost is here in stained glaze, or in the finish process in this case, which is stained glaze. Also, the source here is for the finishing. So the source here is for the door itself, and the source here is for the finish process. Are you going to outsource it to someone, or are you going to do it in-house? In this case, we're doing all of it in-house in this particular default, but you could be outsourcing. You know, a lot of the companies like Conestoga and Wallscraft are now offering their products in a pre-finished option. So down here at the bottom we have our molding, crown mold and light rail, and the finish process for those. And then on the second tab, the interior tab, we have our interior parts, so our unfinished interior. And again, we've talked about this, but let's be clear about this. The unfinished portion does not necessarily mean that this product is raw. In this case, we see that it's pre-finished. So both of these products being pre-finished. So they're not unfinished, you're just not applying a finished process to them. You're not adding labor and material to this product. That's what the unfinished and finished distinction is. This product, 3/4 inch cherry plywood, if you use that on the interior of the cabinet, is going to need to go to the finish room and be stained and clear coated and all, sanded, all the processes that go with that. this product being pre-finished. In this particular row could be unfinished plywood, it could be pre-finished plywood, it could be melamine, it could be anything that you're not going to apply a finish to. And in this row is the things you will. Then down here we're choosing a drawer system, whether that be a wooden drawer box or in this case a system drawer like the Zargan or the Metabox or any of the system drawers or wooden drawers. You see in our selections here we have dovetail plywood, dovetail solid wood, just a simple melamine box. And at times you have jobs with none and you need to say it. If something is not going to be part of a job, we don't need to leave it blank, we need to say none. And in this case, we also have the Nova Pro and the plywood and the Zargan drawer. So basically what you're doing here is you're pre-selecting so that when you start a new job, you're going to see a screen exactly like this screen that is all blank. And you have the option of choosing this one default name and filling all those fields in very quickly. So it's certainly worth taking the time to set up your defaults. And if we go back here to our list view, we see that I've only got 21 of them, less than 24 of them, but you could have as many as you want. It's unlimited. So if you literally wanted to create a dozen or more of them that are specific to specific stain colors or paint colors, in addition to the generic ones, you could do that. You can create as many of these you want. When I was running a cabinet shop day in and day out, I had some of these that were specific to some of my builders. The name would say that it was specific to that builder. They had their own naming conventions for the combination of the door and the finish, and we would utilize that here in this default markups name. And so now let's flip over to the hardware. And here, everything works identical to what we just looked at, other than, we need to choose, instead of wood and door models and finishes, we're basically selecting the door surface hardware, the drawer surface hardware, and you're selecting from a list of items that happen to be in your database. So you're choosing those, and then you're choosing your functional hardware, for in this case the drawer guide and the rollout tray, then your hinge and your leg levelers. And obviously if you don't use leg levelers, you'd leave this blank and leave the quantity set to 0. And then the suspension system, same thing. If you don't use it, you leave these blank and set your quantities to 0. So that pretty much covers the default setups for both material and hardware. Thanks for watching yet another Business Partner Estimating software tutorial. Up next, setting up and managing the 5th of our 6 defaults, letters.